Hey, good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Fantasy Football Breakdown. We're here for another week, and the season is quickly turning to hell. We lost a whole bunch of players this week. There's a whole bunch of players on bye, and there's a lot of things going on as we come down the home stretch of the 2022 season. Joining me, as always, we'll start in North Carolina, is the great Mr. Dunton. Dunton, welcome back.
How is everybody?
I don't know. They can't answer you.
All right, I'm just asking. They might answer. I don't know. You never know.
Fee, wait, you always chime in when North Carolina does well. What are their thoughts going on here with the start of the college basketball season right now?
This is what I'm going to tell you. I am happy with the defense that Carolina is playing because that's always the hardest thing. But I don't understand how we can score 102 points one game and 60 the next game. So we got to figure that out. Inconsistent shooting. But the good thing is both Kentucky and Duke lost last night, so that's always a good day. That's
already a crazy season.
Yep.
Fanduel Fee, how are you doing?
Yes, sir. I'm doing good. I did not do so well in FanDuel last week. I didn't check to see if I followed my own advice or not again. But yeah, I'm hoping to do better this week. So let's get to it.
Nice. I want to give myself another pat in the back, gentlemen. Last week I told you I went 5-0 for the first time in my life. Guess what I did this week?
0-5.
I went 5-0 again, back-to-back weeks. That's pretty impressive, I think.
That is impressive.
You guys maybe want to start listening to me out there if you haven't been already. I think I might.
And you're ahead of Matthew Berry in your big league.
I was one spot ahead of Roto Worlds and NBC Edge's Matthew Berry. I printed that picture I sent you, and I'm going to get a frame. I kid you not. I'm going to hang it on my wall in the Scott Fishbowl. So that was the big news of the week for me.
That's awesome.
All right, so let's get into it. It's first down, and that means it's buy it or bullshit. We're going to start off talking a little bit about the big injuries that I kind of just referenced really quickly. So we lost Zach Ertz for the season. Darren Waller is on IR, which means it's at least 4 weeks. I honestly don't see a reason that they bring him back. Gerald Everett has a juicy matchup against the Chiefs, who can't stop a tight end but may not play. And Dallas Goedert is rumored to be missing a few weeks. We never know what that means. That's coach talk for I'm not letting you know what's really wrong. So buy it or BS. There is no available options at tight end. Gentlemen, what do we do here? Fee, start with you.
So I said it earlier on a previous show, but you need to pray.
Right.
So in this situation, more praying is what you do. Honestly, yeah, you just kind of need to, pick a guy on a random team and hope for the best. Because, if you have any one of those guys, and most likely you don't have a backup tight end, although maybe you do in this season. I certainly did. I have 3 tight ends in several leagues. Not necessarily for this situation, but just because tight end has been so terrible that I needed 3 so I could pick and choose from, from them so I could hopefully do better. But most teams carry only 1 tight end. And so if you have one of these guys, you've just got to kind of pick a team that you think is going to do well that week and hope for the best and that their tight end is going to score you some points.
Dutton.
Just throw a dart. Like, seriously, I mean, like, I'm kind of with Viamano. You just got to look at a matchup and be like, all right, this guy might get some looks, so I'm going to put him in. It's a plug and play kind of thing, I think, because, yeah, it's just such a topsy-turvy position this year. I mean, it's very top heavy with like 3 or 4, but now you have these middle of the road guys that are out, so you're stuck. I mean, you're absolutely stuck. You're hoping to find, go see which defenses give the most points to tight ends. You mentioned Gerald Everett going against the Chiefs. Do you want to play Gerald Everett's backup? I don't know.
Right, and that's the good point, is that who are these guys' backups? I mean, right. I guess Zach Ertz, Trey McBride was the big tight end in the draft, but I mean, he hasn't shown that he could be that guy, like Darren Waller's Moreau, and he's pretty good, but there was a lot of guys. I mean, before Waller went on the IR, he was already missing a couple weeks. Moreau's probably already gone.
Yeah, the Raiders suck.
and the Raiders suck. And I don't even know who the Eagles' backup tight end is. I read today that they have 3 tight ends on the roster. Only one has like 2 catches. Like, right?
Stoll. His name is
Yeah.
Stoll.
Like, who are these guys? And
I don't know.
who's the Chargers' backup tight? Like, who? So
Yeah.
I don't
who are
have
the
him.
options? And I would think possible option is Juwan Johnson, but that guy's got to have been snaked up a couple weeks ago now, right? Like, he's
Right.
the only guy out there. Maybe if you're lucky, that may be the only guy in the waiver wire worth picking up, because I don't know that any of these guys' backups are even worth praying or throwing that dart at, to be honest with you. Yeah, tight ends, it's a very grim situation. Let's move on to the next question. I want to preface it by saying that last week, Dunton said the Falcons are our new Lions. I want to reiterate something that I've said many times. I hate the Falcons, and they gave me every reason to, losing to the Panthers last week and blowing our winning streak on this show. So that leads to the next buy it or BS. On a 2-game winning streak, are the Lions back to being the fantasy football faves? Dutton.
They might have to be. I mean, right? I mean, here's the thing. Their offense is lethal, which is so weird to say about the Lions.
It's
right?
fun to watch.
Like, they just score points. They score
Yeah.
lots of points. So if you can scarf up any Detroit Lions offensive players, go get them. Go get them. Even without TJ Hawkinson, they're scoring points. Like, it's, yeah. Are they going to be good in reality? No, but they're going to make games exciting. I mean, at least this Thanksgiving Day game coming up next week could have the potential to have a lot of points scored in it. Like,
They're gonna win. I told somebody I was watching the game with. I said on Sunday that the Lions are gonna win that game. Lions are beating the Bills.
It's possible.
Fate.
It's funny that Dutton said, it's saying the Lions have a great offense, but think about it. The Lions have got a great offense in years past. Barry Sanders, Calvin
Right.
Johnson. You're talking about, but they've always had the same problem. They've never been able to put anything around them or do anything defensively.
Yes.
So they always give up 30 to 40 points a game, but yeah, they'll score you like 25, 30 points a game also, but they still lose. But it doesn't matter, especially in fantasy for us, right?
Right.
So there's a lot of fantasy goodness on the Detroit offensive side of the ball.
There it is.
Are they back to being fantasy football favorites? Probably. I mean, for fantasy wise, absolutely. Just like Dutton said, they're not going to do anything for you in real life, but fantasy wise, they got some really good players that are scoring big time points, and it's going to continue this week against the Giants. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. So you got the Giants, the Bills, the Jaguars, the Vikings, the Jets, and the Panthers to close the season for the Lions. There's some favorable matchups there. I mean, there are definitely some tough ones, but there's favorable matchups for the fantasy goodness, if you would. So yeah, I'm back on the Lions train. I wanted to pick them this week. We'll get to that in the locks of the week, but I didn't. I stayed clear. But that moves us to the next buy it or BS question. And it's not in the buy it or BS question. I got to ask you both, how in the hell does Josh McDaniel have a job? Can somebody explain it to me? Dutton, explain it to me.
I don't have an explanation.
They are the laughing stock of the NFL.
Like, how many 17-point leads or more have the Raiders had and blown? Let's start there, right? And then let's talk about, you have Devontae Adams, who going into the season was clearly the number 1 wide receiver in football, right? Now, we were all questioning, like, how good is he going to be without Aaron Rodgers? But I just don't understand. Derek Carr is not supposed to be as bad as he is. Nope. Josh McDaniel is supposed to be an offensive genius.
Yep.
I see nothing genius coming out of Las Vegas at all. Nothing.
Correct.
Either one week he runs Josh Jacobs, the next week he either gives him like 6 carries. Like, I mean, he clearly should get fired on Black Monday at the end of the season. If he's not already, like, maybe the Raiders are just like, we're talking to Sean Payton. We're going to see what happens at the end of the season. But yeah, he shouldn't be the coach anymore. He should go back, crawl back to New England like he's already done once before, ask Bill for an offensive coordinator job, and go from there.
Faith.
Yeah. No, I think Josh McDaniels at this point needs to come to the conclusion for himself that he's not an NFL head coach.
Nope.
If you want to be an offensive coordinator or some sort of coordinator or some sort of position coach or something of the sort, by all means. Sounds, you've been done it. You did a great job in New England, it seems like, and everything was hunky dory over there. But as an NFL head coach, you should probably kind of just axe that from your resume and just
I
be
mean, the
like,
team
you know
just
what?
they're so
I am not a
undisciplined.
head coach. I will stick to what I'm good at, which is not being a head coach.
Yeah. I mean, I think they lead the league in penalties, which is par for the course with the Raiders, but they have the dumbest penalties this year. I mean,
And that's
like
coaching. That's
I
coaching.
mean,
right,
and
exactly.
he's got his starting quarterback crying up on the fucking podium. I mean, come on.
I would be crying too.
What
I'd
do
be
we
crying
do?
too if my last two coaches were Gruden and McDaniel. Wouldn't you be crying?
Yeah, I would be. I don't blame Derek Carr. I'm saying McDaniel is the one that's making him cry.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, they lost to a team that was tanking, right? I mean, it was clear as day that they hired a high school football coach to tank, and they lost to them. They lost to a team that's in the tank mode. It's just
To a
unbelievable.
what, 39-year-old Matt Ryan, who had his longest run of his career?
Yeah, that's the best part. That guy can't run. And he went, what? It was like 41 yards, right? It was
Yeah,
long.
like
All right, moving on. This isn't really a buy it or BS, but it's a question we have to discuss. Khalil Herbert was one of the other many injuries this past weekend, and he's now on the IR. Hopefully he can get back for a playoff run for fantasy. But what does that mean for the now? Fee, we'll start with you. How much does Monty's stock rise with Herbert out?
I think it rises. Well, I mean, it was pretty high to begin with, but I think it rises even more now. The Bears are a running team, very obviously. Even as much as Justin Fields runs the ball on his own, they still hand the ball off a lot and they don't throw it a lot. Um, Montgomery has been the lead guy there all season long. Herbert has had flashes and really has eaten into his carries a little bit, but not a ton. But now that he's gone, they don't have anybody else
Yeah.
really backing him up. So now he's the guy no matter what. And on a running team like the Bears are, that's really, that means something. And I think that he becomes probably a top 5 running back the rest of the season.
Yeah. Yeah. I would think in that offense, right? I mean, it's like you said, even if Herbert's running for 140 yards like he has been, Herbert and Montgomery have been totaling over 100, and now you got to assume that's all going to Montgomery, right? Dunton, what do you think?
yeah, I mean, I agree with everything Fee said. The only nervousness I have about it is how much is Justin Fields going to run more now? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
I
Like,
think they both get an increase in their rushing performance, but I don't think
right.
it really hurts Montgomery.
And our team's going to stack the box to make Justin Fields beat them with his arm, which is not his downside. It's just that he doesn't really have anybody to throw the ball to right now.
Fair.
So yeah, I mean, Montgomery clearly his stock's going to rise. I'm just nervous about how much it rises and when is his injury coming, because it could be coming any day now the way things are going.
That's
So,
the other part. And like you said, Fee, I don't know who the heck their backup is, like legit backup is. I mean, I know who's on the roster, but are any of those guys legit every down guys if Monty goes down? Moving on to the next buy it or BS, Christian Kirk. He's on a bye this week, but is he the breakout star of what year are we in? 2022. Dutton, buy it or BS, Christian Kirk is the breakout star.
I guess he's a breakout. I mean, is he the breakout star? Probably not. He is a breakout star, but he always had it in him. I mean, there was a couple of flashes of it in years past. So I mean, he's had a great season. I think in terms of wide receivers, if you drafted him in late rounds, you're loving life right now because you have him, or if you picked him up early as a free agent. I see Fiamano's got Justin Fields as a breakout star, which I think is a much bigger one. I mean, we can name some other guys, but in terms of wide receivers, yeah, he's the breakout star on the wide receiver side. So
Yeah, here's my thing about Christian Kirk. I wanted to say originally that he was not. Then I went and looked at all the stats and was checking out other positions and just to see, where he kind of fit in. And Christian Kirk is the seventh highest wide receiver on the season fantasy wise. And that's ahead of AJ Brown, CD Lamb. Jamar Chase is injured. Mike Evans, Amari Cooper, DK Metcalf. So
All
he is the
guys that
seventh,
went well ahead of him.
well ahead of him. He is the seventh highest wide receiver fantasy wise. Okay, and then if you look at every other position has like the normal guys, right? So like they're not breakouts; they're just guys that you figured that would be at the top of the list, except for quarterback, where Justin Fields has kind of jumped in there as the fifth highest quarterback, and actually Geno Smith is up there too. Now that I look
That's
at
true.
it, but I guess if you take quarterbacks out of the equation, I think it's hard to question why Christian Kirk is not the breakout star. There is nobody else. All the receivers ahead of him are guys that you thought would be there.
Right.
And all the running backs, same situation, are all guys that you knew or thought would be there. There isn't anybody that's in the top 20 in running backs that you didn't think would be there, except for maybe Damian Pierce. Although we've talked about how Wayne was on top of that, and maybe Kenneth Walker, right? But even he is down at like number 20, I think.
Yeah.
So it's not like he's a huge breakout by any means. So Christian Kirk is, like I said, I wanted to say he wasn't, but everything you look at seems to point right to him being one of the biggest breakouts of the year.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't think, until you looked at it, I don't think a lot of people have really sat down and looked at it. And the reason I asked that question is because I looked at it today and I couldn't believe that he was number 7 overall. I mean, I know he's been doing well, but he's getting a touchdown a week and he gets all the targets there, like it's Tay Jones and Marvin Jones who are decent options, but the reality is he's getting all the targets. And it's just really cool to see him doing that because I forgot. I think Dunton, you said it. We knew he could do it, but he had Kyler Murray, and Kyler Murray, we're kind of learning, isn't all that we thought Kyler Murray was. So yeah, it's cool to see him do it. One question I want again, I'm going to ask you. Not in buy it or BS form, but Cooper Kupp injury. Matthew Stafford still in concussion protocol. Do the Rams just shut it down at this point? I mean, is there any reason to bring Cooper Kupp back? Is there any reason to bring Matthew Stafford back? What do the Rams do? Either
I think they almost have to shoot. I feel like they almost have to shoot it down.
Ryan Stafford's arm has been jelly all year. Like, don't you think it's just like, all right, let's just sit him and hopefully get one more year out of him, right? At this point?
Right. So like if he's just fatigued and from last year or whatever, if you just sit him the rest of the year and just save him for at least one more run next year, I feel like that's probably a good plan, right?
Yeah.
And then and same thing with Kupp. If you're gonna do it, you got 2 guys that are injured already. Sit them both, save them, and then try to reload for next year and then hope for the best.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they're losing these next 4 games without Kupp, without it. Even if Stafford plays, they're losing those 4 games. What do you think, Dunton?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you both. I mean, they're 3-6. The playoffs right now are a long shot for them, right? They have a lot of teams to climb over. What are they? They're 1-3 in their division. Like, yeah, they're in trouble. Like, and I don't know. Like, I think you shut it down. I think you evaluate Stafford's arm and you go from there. Like, I don't know. I've said it before. I think at the end of this year, Aaron Rodgers has 2 seasons left. Neither one of them will be with Green Bay. So you bring back Cooper Kupp next year healthy. Do you bring Aaron Rodgers over to LA? That could be a fun thing to watch, right? I mean, you shut it down. There's not much for them to play for. I mean, they're going to play for pride because of the Super Bowl champs. But whoa, talk about, and like you said it, Wayne, like we've talked about the giant syndrome. Like they are the Giants right now, those
Yeah.
Super Bowl years.
Yeah, they are.
So,
Let me ask you guys another question. Last week in Bite or BS, I said, are the Bills who we think they are? You both seem to think that they might have been, but what I was debating was, doesn't Josh Allen always seem to make mistakes against a good team when it matters? Did anyone happen to see what he did this week?
here's my thing about that. That was one of the dumbest play calls I've ever seen in my life. There
And
was
he's been
certain,
involved in some of those that there was one against the Texans a few years back, and you're just like, these. Remember that Texans had no business winning that playoff game. I don't know if you remember
right?
it, and it was
Yeah,
like, what were they doing? But he's always in the middle of it, right? Like, isn't
yeah. I
that
mean,
weird at
but
some point?
yeah, like hike the ball to the quarterback, have him run around for 8 seconds if he can, and then throw it out of bounds because then you can do it again and you can do it again, and then the game's over.
Right.
So, yeah, but I don't know. I think, I mean, that's the game of the year. Clearly, that was the game of the year.
That's
The catch
crazy.
that Justin Jefferson
Are you
made
are
was
you Wayne?
the catch of the year.
Are you talking about the fumble on the goal line?
Or the pick
Yeah,
six, whichever one you want,
or the
the
pick at
interception.
the end of the game.
Well, right.
Right.
So the pick at the end of the game, I mean, I kind of understand he's trying to win the game for you with only however many, there
He
was
threw it into double coverage right to the Vikings.
Right.
right. It was a terrible pass. Right. I'm not saying that, but again, he's trying to win the game. He's not trying to play for the field goal and
Right.
just tie and just have a tie. Right. So like he's trying to make something happen. And like I kind of get that. Yes, it was a terrible pass. Yes, he completely fucked it up. The goal line fumbled snap was absolutely his fault and definitely should not have happened. But just as Dutton said, that's a terrible play call.
Yeah.
You can't be on the 1-inch line and be under center. like Dutton said, have him back in shotgun and move a little bit and just throw the ball up in the air. Have a guy go run deep and just toss it as far as you can to the sideline, almost out of bounds, so it's not intentional grounding.
Exactly.
You waste time, and you do it 3 straight times, and the game's over.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Then that's what I'm saying. It just seems like look, Josh Allen, I will draft him every year in fantasy because this stuff doesn't affect my fantasy team, but it affects real life. Okay.
Right.
The interception, I get what you're saying. Like he was trying to win the game. He was going for it. It was a bad throw, but like those throws don't happen to Patrick Mahomes, right? Those
Right.
are the throws that were like, oh my God, did he just do that? Those throws don't happen to Tom Brady. Those throws didn't happen to Peyton Manning. They got there, right? Like they weren't though. He was just trying to win the game and it was a bad throw. They didn't have that.
Those guys don't make those mistakes.
They don't. And Josh Allen always seems to make it only when it matters. Right?
But here's the thing. I feel like he can correct that. And I know he's been in the league for several years, but he's made such big strides, and he's become so good that those tiny little mistakes that he's made, that while they are big mistakes, but they're only 1 or 2, here and there. I feel like those are things that he can fix.
Hopefully, because those were the things that held him back early on. Right. That was what held him back early on. And if he can't get over that hump, we're looking at a great fantasy quarterback, but just what's the Bills window look like, really?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, let's move on to the locks of the week. Like I said last week, we got burned with the Falcons overall. I improved to 8-3-1 with the Dolphins, who I said to take. Dunton took the Falcons, so he fell to 5-5. Fee came up with the Chargers, saying that there was no way that the Niners were going to cover, and he was correct, and that improved him to a winning record this year, 6-5-1. We both picked the Bucks the same week, and that was the week that they pushed. That's where our tie comes from. But we'll get it rolling this week. No one picked the Lions, and no one picked the Falcons. So, Fee, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I am going to roll with the Dallas Cowboys, -1.5 against the Vikings. Last week, they lost that game in spectacular fashion to the Packers, and they're just not as bad of a team as everyone thinks they might be just because of that one loss. I think they're a really good team. I think they're better than what they showed. The Vikings just came off their Super Bowl win. I'm gonna take the Cowboys -1.5 here against the Vikings.
Yeah, that one had to take a lot out of the Vikings. Dutton.
I'm taking the Jets +3 against the Patriots. I know the Patriots defense is good. I know there's questions about Zach Wilson, but just don't think the Patriots offense can compete with the Jets offense. So I'm going to roll with the Jets. Big Larry's going to be happy with that pick. That's what I'm going with.
I like it. I'm taking the Bears because I hate the Falcons. I just don't think I know the Falcons defense is okay on paper. It's not great. It's not bad. But I just the way that we've been talking about Justin Fields the last couple of weeks, I don't think the Falcons are good enough. I don't understand how they haven't gotten to Ritter yet. I don't know why Marcus Mariota cannot throw the ball. He's a large part of the reason they're losing, and I just think the Bears, they're getting 3 because they're on the road. So I think the Bears at the very least cover, if not win this game. Who do we want to lock in?
I like the Bears because that was going to be my other pick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll roll with the Bears.
All right, let's do the Bears. And while we do the Bears,
Bears.
Yeah, the Bears. Fanduel Fee is going to do his stacks.
All right. I am going to start us off with Jared Goff going against the New York Giants. He is so cheap this week. He's down. I think he's like the 12th highest salaried quarterback on the slate. He's at 6,800. I think you could stack him with Amon-Ra St. Brown would be a solid stack. Amon-Ra's at 7,800, so he's priced up a little bit. But I think it would be worth it, especially for the price savings you're going to get with Goff against the Giants. I also like Jalen Hurts this week against Indianapolis. You're going to spend the second highest salary for him, but I think that Philly's angry this week. I think that they're upset that they lost that game. I think they're going to come out like gangbusters. Indianapolis is terrible. You stack Hurts with A.J. Brown, who did nothing last week, by the way. Hurts is at 8,800. A.J. Brown's at 8,400. I don't care. You spend up for him, and you figure out the rest of your salary savings elsewhere. And I feel like that might be a pretty unique way to start your lineup because I think a lot of people are not going to want to spend up for those guys this week. My last stack, I like Dak Prescott against Minnesota. I just spoke about how the Cowboys, I think, are going to win this game. You can stack him with CeeDee Lamb. Dak is at 7,500 this week. CeeDee's at 8,100. Some one-offs for you. I really like the Commanders running backs this week, whether it's Brian Robinson or Antonio Gibson. They are both 6,600 each. They're playing Houston, who has the worst defense, rushing defense in the league this year. So either one of those guys, you could throw out there at 6,600, not a terrible salary. And I also really love, we spoke about him a little bit, but I love David Montgomery. No Khalil Herbert this week. Montgomery's only 6,200 against Atlanta, and Atlanta's another team that has a really terrible rushing defense. So this week, I think it's pay up for wide receivers, find some savings at running back, and try to stay in the 5Ks for tight ends this week.
Which shouldn't be too hard because most tight ends have to be worth about $2,500 right now.
Yeah, pretty much with all the injuries.
All right. Thank you, Fanduel Fee. Let's move on and get to our red zone, and we're going to move on to the starts and sits of the week. We did all right last week, I think. Hold on. We got Justin Fields for you. Goddard was good, got in the end zone until he got hurt. Patterson and Claypool both busted out for us. Gino, we told you to sit Gino, and he had a great fourth quarter, but leading up into that fourth quarter, he was kind of shaky. Green Bay, I don't know how they did it, but they ran on Dallas. Nobody else has this year. But we were right about Mike Evans and Robert Tonyan. So what do we have for you this week? Let's remind you, injuries. No Ertz, no Waller, no Goddard, no Kupp, no Herbert. Buys. 4 starting quarterbacks in most, and definitely in 2 quarterback leagues, but in most leagues, you got Trevor Lawrence, Tua, Gino, and Brady out. Quite a bit of running backs in Etienne, Mostert, and Jeff Wilson have been doing both very well. Kenneth Walker, who Fee mentioned earlier, And then White and touchdown and playoff Lenny on the Bucks around. And then receivers, you got a whole mess out. You got Kirk, Waddle, Hill, Tyreek Hill, Lockett, Metcalf, Evans, and Godwin. So, boys, we got a lot of work to do here. Let's start with sits. Quarterback, Dunton, we'll start with you.
Starting with sits, you say. All right.
No,
I'm
I meant starts. Go with
going to
starts.
starts. Okay. I am starting Daniel Jones against the Lions because they can't stop a paper bag from blowing down the street. And I think Daniel Jones has a decent game because, like you said, we got a lot of quarterbacks on buys, so Daniel Jones might be a good play this week. You're not going to play him a lot of weeks, but play him this week.
Lions defense is like trying to catch a ping pong ball. That's what the Lions defense is. It's impossible to stop. Fee.
I'm going on the other side of that game. I spoke about him earlier, and you're going to sense a theme here with my starts. But Jared Goff against the Giants.
Nice. I do like Jimmy G this week. I think he's got a favorable matchup on Monday night. But I'm going to tell you to start Russell Wilson. I feel like he's been shunned in the fantasy world. And obviously, we said there's quite a few quarterbacks on bye, but he's playing the Raiders. And Fee said, or Dunton, someone said earlier that they're awful, and they are. They're a very, very bad football team. And I think this is, if you have to start Russell Wilson, this is the week to do it. I'm good locking in Daniel Jones because that's kind of a nice, like you said, there aren't many weeks that we're going to say start Daniel Jones. So I think that's a good week to lock him in. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm okay with it. I like it. Yeah,
right.
and for exactly that reason, because most of the time Daniel Jones is not a fantasy starter,
right?
And I feel like in order for him to kind of do well, he's going to need to run the ball, and the Lions just aren't. They can't stop, like you said, can't stop a paper bag. So,
Fee, running back.
I'm starting David Montgomery against the Atlanta Falcons. Spoke about him earlier in the Fanduel segment.
Yeah. Dutton?
I'm starting your nemesis, Joe Mixon, against the Steelers.
Is he going to score 5 touchdowns again?
I don't think he's going to score 5. He might score 2.
Okay. Fee mentioned it earlier about the Texans' run defense being the worst in the league. They're allowing 26.4 points per game to the running backs, and they've allowed a worse NFL worst 13 touchdowns on the ground to running backs and one more through the air. So I'm going to tell you, I'm going to pick Brian Robinson and make him the start out of the two. But I do think Fee was right that either one of them, both of them should do well. But I'm going to tell you that Brian Robinson is the good start this week. Who do you want to lock in?
I kind of like Brian Robinson.
Yeah. I mean, I like anyone rushing against the Texans. So, yeah, that works.
Brian Robinson it is.
I'm going to start with wide receiver. I'm going to tell you to start Mooney. The Falcons' pass defense is horrific. I believe it's the worst. It was at least one of the 2 worst. I don't remember if it is the worst, but I know they have allowed the most passing touchdowns to the wide receiver, which is money for fantasy. And we talked about it. Fields doesn't throw the ball a lot, but when he does, and it's a wide receiver, it seems to be Mooney is the guy that he likes, and probably because he's the most dependable. Dutton, to you.
I'm starting Brandon Ayuk against the Cardinals. They've thrown in the towel for the season, I believe, the Cardinals. So their defense has been horrendous. Their offense isn't much better. But the 49ers are rolling, and they have a lot of weapons. Brandon Ayuk this week.
Hey.
So I wanted to start a Cincinnati Bengal wide receiver this week against the Steelers. But I had a tough time choosing. But I'm going to go with Tyler Boyd this week. I just think that against the Steelers, he'll have the better game between him and T. Higgins. I feel like T. Higgins is kind of the big play guy for them. And Tyler Boyd is more of the possession, let's say, guy. And I think he's probably the better option this week.
And plus, I mean, if you have Higgins, you're starting him, right? I like Boyd as kind of like the guy that you might not start, but in a week where we just listed 7 wide receivers out, yeah, 8 if you can't include Kupp with the injury. I like Boyd. I would. I
was going to pick Boyd, but I already picked the Bengal and Mixon, so that's why I avoided him.
All right, I like Boyd.
Avoid Boyd.
No, don't avoid Boyd. Go Boyd. Fee.
All right, tight end. I am starting Tyler Higbee against the New Orleans Saints. We just spoke about the tight end issues we have throughout this league. While New Orleans is third in the league on defense against the tight end, with no Cooper Kupp, the Rams are gonna have to go elsewhere. And Higbee had, I think, 7 catches. It was on eight catches
on 8 targets
last week. I think he's got to be the guy for them. And I don't think it's going to matter that New Orleans is third against the tight end. I think he's going to get volume and he's going to get the targets, and it's just a matter of what he does with them. So I'm gonna start with Tyler Higbee this week.
He's going to be peppered with targets. That's for harass. And the bottom line is, if the Saints are good at stopping 30% of passes that go to the tight end, let's just say, make up a number, 20 targets are going to Higbee. There's nobody else to throw the ball to on that team, so he's still going to catch 7 or 8 passes, right? Yeah. So even if the Saints are good against the tight end, there's going to be so many targets going his way. Dunton.
I'm starting Cole Kmet against the Falcons. You already mentioned it. The Falcons D is not very good. Justin Fields is cranking it right now, and Cole Kmet will be peppered with targets in the red zone. So he doesn't get peppered until the red zone.
You want to tell anyone about Cole Kmet last week?
Yeah, you killed it with taking calling the Cole Kmet huge game. You texted me, I think it was like around 12 o'clock, right before the 1 o'clock games. And you said Cole Kmet's going to be the guy this week. And I was like, really, Cole Kmet? And you're like, yeah, he's going to do it. And I was like, okay. And he did it. 2 touchdowns. He had a gigantic game and he crushed it.
Yeah, he sure did. So I'm going to go with a guy that you probably have to, he might be available on the waiver wire, and that's Tyler Conklin. And you might think it's weird going against the Pats D, but the Pats defense have actually allowed the one soft spot that they've allowed 7 touchdowns to the tight end this year. It's pretty much the only thing they're not doing well is stopping the tight end. And if Dutton's pick is right, taking the Jets, it's going to have to be Zach Wilson throwing a couple touchdowns because they are ridiculous against the run. So my pick is Tyler Conklin, and kind of a weird under the radar, but I'm good with Kmet if you guys are.
Yeah.
Want to do Kmet?
Yep.
Cole Kmet it is.
Cole Kmet. So let's review our starts of the week. I like these starts, right? They're definitely guys that we don't say a lot. Daniel Jones at quarterback, Brian Robinson at running back, Boyd at wide receiver, and Cole Kmet at tight end. Let's move on to sits. We'll go to you.
I'm sitting Derek Carr. I'm sitting Derek Carr the rest of the year. Derek Carr, sit him. Oh, by the way, Devontae Adams didn't practice today. He was limited with an abdomen strain. So Derek Carr it is.
Oh, man. Fee.
I'm going to sit Kirk Cousins this week. I know that you might not be able to sit Kirk Cousins because he's probably a starter on anybody's team in fantasy, but they're playing the Cowboys, and again, the Cowboys D has just been insane against the pass. And I feel like they're going to come out hard after losing last week to Green Bay. So I'm going to sit Kirk Cousins this week.
I mean, those were you know, we make our spreadsheet before the show, and I was the last to I'm usually the first, and I was the last to make it this week, and those were the 2 guys I was looking at. And I really don't know, because of the lack of quarterbacks out there this week, anyone else to sit. So I mean, Jacoby Brissett, you know, this is his last week starting, right? I believe. And then next week, Watson is back. I mean, I don't know that they're going to throw him right in the fire. But Brissett in Buffalo, they're saying there might be like 30 inches of snow. Like
6 feet. They're predicting up to 6 feet of snow, but now they're talking about moving the game to Detroit.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Well, I was saying Brissett because of 30 inches of snow. So, I'll just throw Brissett out there, but I really do think Derek Carr is probably the lock to sit this week, and I don't think Kirk Cousins does very well against the Dallas defense either. So I'll leave it up to you guys who we lock in. What do you think?
I'll sit there.
I'd say
that's the easy
be
one.
bold and sit Cousins.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go bold. Well, we've always gone bold on this podcast. So
Yeah. And speaking of going bold, Fee, why don't we let you start things off on running back?
This is extremely bold. I'm gonna sit Jonathan Taylor this week. Indy, they just played very well last week for Jeff Saturday. And that was fantastic. But they're not a good team.
No.
And the Eagles have the best defense in the league. And I said it earlier, they're going to come out angry. They're not going to be happy about what happened last week. And I know that they don't have that D tackle guy. I forget his name. All the Eagles fans will kill me for this. I forget his name, but their interior D tackle guy who has been amazing at stopping the run, which is why they were able to get run on by the Commanders. I get all that, but I feel like they're going to figure out a way to stop the run this week. And like I said, they're going to come out angry, and I don't believe in Indianapolis at all. So I want to sit Jonathan Taylor this week.
Yeah. Dutton.
I'm sitting James Conner and the awful Arizona Cardinals offense against the 49ers defense.
Yeah.
They just don't. I mean, and they don't have another running back in Arizona, right? They cut their second string or their
Benjamin cut. The other guy. I'm going to tell you to sit Michael Carter because, as I mentioned earlier, the Pats really only have one weakness on defense, and that's allowing tight end touchdowns. So Michael Carter, Pats are allowing just 11.6 points to running backs per game. They've only allowed one touchdown this year. We're 11, 10, 11 weeks into the season. They've allowed one touchdown on the ground. Yeah, I'm benching Michael Carter. I think James Conner's the easy sit here, but I'll let you guys talk.
I would rather sit Michael Carter, to be honest with you, because of exactly what you just said.
Yeah. Okay. I mean,
and to be fair, listen, to be fair, James Conner, I understand San Francisco's defense is very good against the run. But like Dunton said, there is nobody else.
Yeah.
Right.
When they cut Eno Benjamin, James Conner's going to get all the work. Yeah. Whether that's out of the backfield catching passes or running the ball, he may just get enough for you points wise. While the run game might not be very good, he still may end up scoring some decent points for you this week.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna go. First of all, let me say this. I'm gonna start with wide receiver. I was gonna say Terry McLaurin, but I would never do this on the show because then I'd get yelled at by Fee. So I went with Curtis Samuel. I mentioned it 2 weeks ago when I said to sit Devontae Smith against the Texans, and I got a couple text messages from people that listen to the show, and I was right. He did terrible against the Texans because A, the Texans are good against the pass. B, they're very good, and I said this that week, at taking out the second receiver and making the main guy beat them. So I think Terry McLaurin will have a good week. And whatever letter I'm on, C or D or 3, whatever I am now, the Texans are really good against the pass because everybody runs on them and because they can run on them all day and they only have to defend about 15 passes per game. And I already told you Brian Robinson's a start, and that's why I think Samuel's the sit. Fig.
Yeah, just to kind of expand on that real quick. Terry McLaurin's relationship with Taylor Heineke. Heineke just, like you said earlier, the whole Peppers thing, he just peppers him with targets. Yeah. He gets like 30-something% of all passes that he throws. Like, that's just kind of an insane number. So, like, whether they're good against the pass or not, he's just going to get a ton of volume, and that's going to kind of help him along the way. So I kind of agree with the Curtis Samuel situation. Yeah. I am going to sit Allen Robinson this week against the Saints. I know that he's probably the best receiver they have now with Cooper Kupp gone, but I don't think it's going to matter. Actually, Tyler Higbee could be the best receiver they have, and that's why it's part of the reason why I'm starting him. Yeah. But Allen Robinson just hasn't done anything this year. He hasn't been able to get any separation. Stafford's out, Kupp's out. For all we know, they could just double Allen Robinson. But they might not even have to be fair. So I'm going to sit Allen Robinson this week.
And Dutton.
I am sitting Amari Cooper. I was sitting him before the weather report. I'm definitely sitting him now with the weather report, unless the game has moved to Detroit. And then I'm still sitting Amari Cooper. I just think the Bills' pass rush and secondary is a little too much for the Browns right now. They're going to run the ball a lot, the Browns anyway, or try to at least.
Allen Robinson, I think you should sit, and I'll pick him for the rest of the season if you want to, because that team is, like we said, that team is done, especially if it's Wolford.
Yeah.
Tight end, Dunton.
Robert Tanyan against the Titans. Only because Aaron Rodgers might have found a wide receiver in Christian Watson.
Is he fool's gold?
Finally
Is
he
he
learned
fool's
how to.
gold? You know he's going to be the most picked up player on waiver wires this
Yeah,
week.
I think it's fool's gold in terms of he's not going to have 3 touchdowns. I don't think he's going to have 2 touchdowns, but I think he's going to get targets. I think he's going to have a touchdown. I think Alan Lazard is getting healthy again. He had that big catch at the end of the game to set up the game-winning field goal. And historically, Aaron Rodgers does not like tight ends. So,
Right.
I think if he can get some wide receivers, I think Robert Tonyan is a sit.
I don't think that Christian Watson's fool's gold. If you're talking about 3 touchdowns a game or 2 touchdowns a game, sure, maybe. But I actually think Christian Watson could be the real deal. If you saw when you watch that game, I mean, he's been injured like half the season. But he looks the part. He looks like he's a good receiver. And he made it happen last week. And I think that he's better than people think that he might be, or prior to last week. People thought that he might be. So I think that Aaron Rodgers actually may have found something in Christian Watson, and I think they'll continue that the rest of the season. But off of that, I am sitting Kyle Pitts because you should have been sitting Kyle Pitts all year.
I agree. And I think it's also more Mariota than it is Pitts at this point too.
It's not because of him. It's just because of their offense and the way that they run the ball and don't do anything else. And Marcus Mariota, it sucks. And how he blocks all the time. He became too good of a blocker. If he sucked at blocking, he'd run more passes, I guess. I don't know.
Fly all game.
But yeah, I mean, they're not using him the way they should, but it's just the way they run their offense, and it sucks for him.
Well, again, my pick is dependent on the snow. First of all, the Browns are good against the tight end, so I was going to say sit Dawson Knox, but then when the reports of the snow, and I did not know about Detroit, I figured that they'd be on the ground the whole time, so Dawson Knox would be moved into a blocking scheme and taken out of the pass game, whatever pass game there is. Even if they do go to Detroit, I'm going to just stick with Dawson Knox. I don't think he's a major part of the offense as much as we thought he would be. He definitely gets some good catches, but I don't think this is the week that he does it. So I'm good with Pitts, to be honest with you.
Pitts it is. He is the Pitts.
He is the Pitts. So to review our sits, to end with Pitts, Kirk Cousins is at quarterback, Michael Carter at running back, Allen Robinson at wide receiver, and Kyle Pitts at tight end. That was a lot to cover. I think we got it all. Did we get all the injuries? Did we get all the? Yeah, we got everything, right? We mentioned the Eno Benjamin. That was just a crazy one. It turns out from what it sounds like, he's just a whiner, and he just didn't fit in, and he didn't like the fact that he basically lost his starting job, it sounded like. And
right.
Anyway, anything else to add, gentlemen?
No, but I don't think they should move the game in Buffalo. How do you move a snow game in Buffalo? But whatever.
Nah, you got to play that shit in the snow.
Isn't that what football is about? That's why you're
worried about the Bills Mafia coming to the game when there's possibly 6 feet of snow, because they will come if they have the game.
Yep.
And they'll do it Iditarod style, though. They're crazy up there. They'll find a bunch of dogs and ride sleighs. They'll be fine.
They'll have dogs pull tables for them.
Yeah, the dogs they won't be drunk. They'll be the ones driving.
It'll be fine.
All right, go win some money, go win some fantasy. We'll see you next week on the Fantasy Football Breakdown.